There is a strange restlessness inside you that brought you here. Not the kind that can be named or easily dismissed, but the kind that wakes you in the middle of the night with a sense that something essential is trying to reach you. This is not coincidence. This is not a random click or an algorithmic accident. What you are feeling is the beginning of a recognition, a whisper from the depths of your own psyche signaling that you are ready for something your conscious mind has not yet fully understood. The universe does not call everyone at the same time. It waits. It watches. And when the soul is prepared to expand beyond the boundaries of what it has known, the call comes in forms that cannot be ignored. You have been seeing signs, messages that appear again and again, themes that follow you from conversation to dream to the page in front of you now. Jung understood this as synchronicity, the meaningful coincidence that bridges the inner and outer worlds. It is not magic in the mystical sense, but a language, a symbolic thread woven by the collective unconscious that signals alignment between what you are becoming inside and what the world is preparing to reflect back to you. These moments are not meant to comfort you. They are meant to awaken you. They arrive precisely when the ego is strong enough to bear the weight of what the self is ready to reveal. Perhaps you have always felt different, not in a way that made you proud, but in a way that isolated you, that made you question whether you belonged anywhere at all. This sensation is not a flaw in your design, it is a mark. Jung spoke of certain individuals who carry a vocational pull, a calling that is not chosen but inherited from the soul itself. You may have spent years trying to fit into spaces that rejected your essence, adjusting yourself to be more palatable, more acceptable, more like everyone else. But the discomfort never left, and now you are here beginning to understand that what you thought was inadequacy was actually the first signal that you were built for something the ordinary world cannot accommodate. The tension you feel is not between you and the world. It is between your conscious ego and the deeper self that seeks to emerge fully into the light. Have you ever wondered why some people awaken to certain truths while others remain completely indifferent? Why a phrase, a teaching, a moment of insight strikes you at the core while others walk past it without a second glance? The psyche has its own timing. It opens doors only when the structure within is strong enough to hold what lies beyond them. If you are reading this now, it is because something inside you has shifted. A threshold has been crossed, and the universe, which operates not through words but through resonance, has recognized that shift and is responding. But this recognition comes with a weight you may not have anticipated, because woven into the fabric of this calling is a wound that has shaped you since the beginning. There is a voice inside you, quiet but relentless, that says you are not enough, that you do not deserve the fullness of what life offers. That abundance, love, recognition, peace, these are for others, not for you. This belief did not form in a vacuum. It was planted early, in moments of rejection or neglect, in the spaces where you needed to be seen and were met with absence instead. Jung's work on the shadow reveals how these early wounds crystallize into patterns that block the natural flow of individuation. The psyche, in an attempt to protect you from further harm, builds walls, and those walls, over time, become a prison. This is not simply a psychological issue. It becomes a vibrational frequency, the energy of scarcity, of unworthiness, of I am not deserving, radiates outward and attracts confirmations of its own truth. You do not consciously choose this, but the unconscious, which governs far more of your reality than the ego likes to admit, ensures that what you believe about yourself becomes what you experience in the world. The rejection you felt as a child becomes the rejection you anticipate as an adult. And in anticipating it, you create the conditions for it to repeat. This is the tragic brilliance of the psyche's attempt at coherence. It would rather confirm a painful belief than risk the destabilization of a new, unfamiliar truth. There is another layer here, one that runs even deeper. When the wound of insufficiency takes root, it does more than shape your external circumstances, it becomes an identity. You begin to organize your sense of self around the absence of something essential. The void left by early neglect or emotional abandonment becomes the center around which everything else revolves. And paradoxically, this void becomes familiar. It becomes safe. Because as painful as it is to feel unworthy, at least it is predictable. At least you know how to navigate it. The unknown territory of actually receiving, of being valued, of allowing yourself to be seen in your fullness, that is terrifying. So the unconscious, in its strange loyalty to what is known, will sabotage what it does not recognize. You push away love because love feels foreign. You reject opportunity because success feels like a betrayal of the story you have been telling yourself for years. What is the difference between true humility and the false modesty that disguises fear? True humility is the acceptance of your place in the larger whole, a recognition that you are neither more nor less than anyone else, but that you have a unique role to play in the unfolding of collective consciousness. False modesty, on the other hand, is a defense mechanism. It is the ego's way of avoiding responsibility, of staying small so that it does not have to face the enormity of what it might be capable of. When you say, "I am not special, I am just like everyone else," you may believe you are being humble, but often you are hiding. You are refusing the call because answering it would require you to step into a visibility that feels unbearable. Jung identified a particular psychological structure he called the Transcendent Function, the capacity within certain individuals to hold and integrate opposites, to serve as bridges between the unconscious and conscious realms. Not everyone carries this function. It is not a matter of superiority, but of design. Some souls are structured to bear the tension of paradox, to stand in the space where contradictions meet and do not destroy each other, but instead give birth to something new. If you are one of these individuals and the fact that you are here suggests you might be, then you have likely felt the weight of this capacity without understanding what it was. You have felt torn between worlds, unable to fully belong to either. You have sensed that you see things others do not, feel things others cannot name, carry burdens others do not even perceive. This is not a gift in the way gifts are usually understood. It is a responsibility. And every responsibility of this magnitude carries a cross, not in the religious sense, though the symbolism is apt, but in the psychological sense. There is a weight that comes with being able to hold what others cannot. There is a cost to seeing clearly in a world that prefers comfortable illusions. Jung spoke of the wounded healer, the individual who has descended into their own underworld and emerged not unscathed, but transformed. Your sensitivity is not a weakness. It is the instrument through which transformation occurs. You were broken so that you could understand brokenness. You were brought to your knees so that you could learn to stand in a way that does not rely on external support. Why does the universe choose souls already marked by suffering? Because only those who have walked through their own darkness can guide others without getting lost. Only those who have faced their own shadows can hold space for the shadows of others without fear or judgment. This is not romanticizing pain. It is recognizing that pain, when integrated rather than repressed, becomes wisdom. And wisdom, in the Jungian sense, is not intellectual knowledge. It is lived truth. It is the ability to be present with what is, without needing to fix or flee from it. But there is a trap here, one that ensnares many who begin to awaken to this calling. It is the trap of spiritual ego, the confusion between being chosen and being superior. The moment you believe that your sensitivity makes you better than others, you have fallen out of alignment with the very function you are meant to serve. Being chosen is not about elevation, it is about service. It is about being willing to carry something on behalf of the collective, often without recognition, often without reward. The true chosen one does not seek validation. They do not need applause. They do the work because the work must be done, and because they are capable of doing it. That is all. To receive everything from the universe, you must first die to who you thought you were. This is the paradox at the heart of individuation. The persona, that carefully constructed mask you have worn to navigate social reality, must be dismantled. Every identity you clung to for safety, every role you played to earn love, every belief you adopted to fit in, all of it must be surrendered. This is not a metaphorical death. It feels like an actual ending. Relationships dissolve, careers collapse, structures you spent years building crumble overnight, and in the wreckage, you are left with nothing but the question of who you are when all the externals are stripped away. Jung called this the desert period, the time of emptiness that precedes rebirth. It is not punishment. It is gestation. You are being emptied of what is false so that you can be filled with what is essential. The ego resists this process with everything it has because the ego's job is survival, and survival requires continuity. The idea of dying to the known self feels like annihilation. But the self, that deeper center of the psyche, knows that what is being destroyed is only the illusion. The truth of who you are cannot be destroyed. It can only be revealed. The unconscious uses crisis to force this revelation. It orchestrates losses, ruptures, breakdowns, not out of cruelty but out of necessity. You would not have let go willingly. You were too identified with the structures that kept you small. So the universe, operating through the intelligence of your own deeper psyche, removes what you could not release on your own. What you call destruction is actually liberation. The relationships that end were not aligned with your true frequency. The identities that collapse were never yours to begin with. The beliefs that shatter were inherited, not chosen. And in the space left behind, there is finally room for the self to emerge. Are you willing to die to who others think you are so that you can be born into who you have always been at the level of the soul? This is the question the universe is asking you now. And the answer is not verbal, it is vibrational. It is demonstrated through your willingness to let the old structures fall without clinging, to walk through the fire of your own transformation without demanding that it look different than it does. Jung understood that the unconscious does not communicate through language. It speaks in symbols, in images, in energies that bypass the rational mind entirely. The universe does not respond to your affirmations or your wishful thinking. It responds to what you are, to the frequency you emit, to the unintegrated shadows that still govern your choices beneath the surface of awareness. This is why so many people who pursue spiritual awakening or manifestation practices find themselves frustrated. They are trying to attract something their psyche is not yet aligned with. They are asking for love while still vibrating at the frequency of unworthiness. They are calling in abundance while still holding the belief that scarcity is their natural state. The concept of the shadow is essential here. The shadow is everything you have rejected about yourself, everything you deemed unacceptable or dangerous or shameful. It is not evil. It is simply disowned, and what is disowned does not disappear. It sinks into the unconscious, and from there it runs the show. You do not attract what you consciously desire. You attract what is unintegrated within you. Your wounds, your fears, your unexamined beliefs, these are what magnetize your external reality. Until you turn toward the shadow and bring it into the light of consciousness, it will continue to create the very circumstances you are trying to escape. This is why individuals who are awakening, who are stepping into greater light, often find themselves facing the darkest periods of their lives. It is not a contradiction. It is a necessity. The light you are embodying illuminates everything that has been hidden. It calls the shadow to the surface so that it can be seen, acknowledged, and integrated. This is uncomfortable. It is destabilizing. But it is also the only path to wholeness. You cannot bypass the shadow. You cannot transcend what you have not first integrated. The spiritual path is not about becoming more enlightened. It is about becoming more whole. There is also a loneliness that comes with this process. As you begin to vibrate at a different frequency, the world around you may no longer recognize who you are. Friendships fade. Family members grow distant. The communities you once felt part of no longer feel like home. This is not rejection in the way you might interpret it. It is reconfiguration. Your energetic signature has shifted, and the relationships that were based on the old frequency can no longer hold. Some will evolve with you. Many will not, and that is not a failure. It is a natural consequence of growth. The universe is not taking people away from you. It is clearing space for connections that match who you are becoming. What is the difference between isolating yourself out of fear and retreating for the sake of alignment? Fear-based isolation is a withdrawal from life, a shutting down in response to perceived threat. It is the ego trying to protect itself by cutting off from the world entirely. Alignment-based solitude, on the other hand, is a conscious choice to step back from the noise so that you can hear the signal. It is not avoidance. It is recalibration. You are not hiding. You are gathering yourself. You are allowing the deeper frequencies to settle so that when you re-engage with the world, you do so from a place of clarity rather than reactivity. For Jung, the self is the totality of the psyche, the integration of all opposites. It is not the ego, which is only a small fragment of the whole. The self encompasses both light and shadow, both masculine and feminine, both conscious awareness and unconscious depth. To receive everything from the universe means to embrace this totality without judgment. It means accepting that you are not one-dimensional, that you contain multitudes, that you are capable of both great love and great rage, both profound wisdom and deep confusion. This is not a moral failing. It is the human condition. And the work of individuation is not to eliminate the parts of yourself you dislike, but to integrate them into a coherent whole. Jung spoke of the coincidentia oppositorum, the union of opposites, as the ultimate goal of the individuation process. You cannot be whole if you are at war with yourself. You cannot embody the fullness of your being if you are constantly rejecting parts of your own nature. The anger you suppress does not disappear. It leaks out in passive aggression or chronic resentment. The grief you deny does not dissolve. It calcifies into numbness or depression. The desires you shame do not fade. They drive you from the shadows, creating compulsions you cannot understand. The path to wholeness requires radical acceptance, not the kind of acceptance that resigns itself to suffering, but the kind that sees the entirety of your experience, the pain and the beauty, the failure and the triumph, and says yes to all of it. Why is it that the people who suffer most deeply are often the ones with the greatest capacity for collective healing? Because suffering expands you and it cracks you open. It removes the superficial layers and reveals what lies beneath. When you have been to the depths of your own despair, when you have faced the parts of yourself you thought would destroy you and survived, you develop a quality that cannot be taught. You develop presence. You develop the ability to sit with another person's pain without needing to fix it, without needing to make it prettier or more palatable. This is the gift of the integrated shadow. It is not about having no darkness. It is about having walked through your own darkness and emerged, not as someone who is perfect, but as someone who is real. The internal war ends when you stop fighting, when you stop trying to amputate the parts of yourself that feel inconvenient or uncomfortable, when you stop pretending that you are only light and never shadow, when you finally accept that your wounds are not obstacles to your purpose but integral to it. something shifts. The energy you were using to maintain the internal conflict is freed, and that energy becomes available for creation, for expression, for the work you came here to do. Your wounds stop controlling you the moment you stop trying to control them. They become instead the very source of your medicine. The places where you were broken are the places through which the light can now pour. Do you see that receiving everything is not about external accumulation? It is not about gathering more possessions or achievements or accolades. It is about internal acceptance. It is about being able to look at the entirety of who you are, the luminous and the shadowed, the healed and the still healing, and recognize that all of it belongs. That none of it disqualifies you from the fullness of life, that you do not need to be fixed or perfected or sanitized in order to be worthy of love, of peace, of joy, of purpose. You are already whole. You have always been whole. The work is not to become something you are not. The work is to remember what you have always been beneath the layers of conditioning and wounding and fear. After the descent, after the dissolution, after the long night of integrating what was disowned, there comes a return. But it is not a return to the life you left behind. You cannot go back to who you were before. That version of you no longer exists. The return Jung spoke of is the return of the hero, the individual who has journeyed into the underworld and brought back the treasure, not for themselves alone, but for the collective. You come back transformed. You come back carrying a medicine that could only be distilled in the solitude of your own process. And this medicine is not something you can package or sell or explain in neat terms. It is something you embody. It is in the way you hold space. It is in the quality of your presence. It is in the refusal to abandon yourself or anyone else in the face of what is difficult. The true chosen one does not seek validation from the external world. They do not need to be recognized or celebrated or understood. They have moved beyond the need for external confirmation because they have found an internal anchor that cannot be shaken by opinion or circumstance. This is what Jung meant by the realization of the self. It is not egoic inflation. It is the opposite. It is the ego finally surrendering its need to be the center, finally recognizing that it is in service to something larger, something that does not require applause to know its own worth. Receiving everything manifests not as accumulation but as fullness. You do not need more because you are already complete.